Hey guys, Dave here with Affordable Door and Gate. I feel like I had a subscriber ask me about trim nailers, so I wanted to make a short little video regarding trim nailers. These were like, this one right here is a DeWalt. It's the old school, it's an 18 volt. They've kind of lasted so long now, I haven't really upgraded. I think one of the guys has a rigid, the other guy has a newer, is it the 20 volt DeWalt? But I still got like 3 or 4 of these old 18 volts, and they just kind of work their way through the trucks, and they've kind of gotten retired, so they don't get used a lot. And I don't do a lot of residential, so I don't use them as much as I used to. But if you're an older installer like myself, you remember when you used to have to install doors with a drill? I remember it all the time, right? And then you got the bit, right? You finally got the bit that had the magnet in it, the 7/16 magnet bit. And oh my gosh, that was like heaven, right? You were like, oh, this is great. I don't have to hold it anymore. You just go ahead and start screwing it. Well, remember the drills when you'd be on a ladder and you're doing a residential and that thing would bite, right? And you didn't have the settings right, and that thing would grab and it'd come around, bop you in the face, or knock you off the ladder. Oh boy, I don't miss those days. So when they came out with the impacts, right? The impacts were the cat's meow, I must say. And then you have the 7/16s, and they were shorter, so you could get around the sides with you can get 3/8 drivers, so you can get your bolts and all that stuff tightened. Oh, loved it. So we've come a long ways. I used to hand bang a lot of weather seal, I remember. And then I think I was at a carpenter somewhere, and I was watching him do a house or something, and I seen he had one of these. And at the time, and they still are kind of pricey, they're right around about $300-400. They're more like $400. They're probably gone up even. And it was kind of a hard pill to swallow. But I tell you what, the efficiency, the speed of these things is amazing. Now, some pointers I would say though is I prefer, this is a preference that I prefer or I like, is I like the 45. I like the ones that are slanted. I just feel like they get up in the corners, when you're here. I mean, this one does actually really, it works just fine. You can really do it, but it just seems like it gets in the corners a little better. I like how it feels in my hands. It just, it feels a little better. But this is an old straight one, and this one does the job. Funny little joke. I remember one time we're you know how it is. Of course, we were an hour and a half or so, 2 hours away from town, and in Michigan we can get into the boonies, and I'm kind of a superstitious person and kind of like voodoo and stuff a little bit. But I remember one of the guys I was working with, he was sitting there and he's shooting the nails, boom, boom, shooting them. And a guy walks over and he goes, man, he goes, that's nice. He goes, what is that? And he was a carpenter, right? And the guy, the guy I was working with, he goes, oh, he goes, yeah, he goes, it's a DeWalt and this. And he goes, they work really good. They work great. Well, you know what? I kid you not, a minute or two later, we're sitting there and we are right at the home stretch, right? We probably got to put maybe like 10 more nails in, and the darn belt in this thing starts shredding. So when it winds up, I don't know, you can probably hear it. Obviously don't do this at home, but let's see if it'll wind up for us. So it's got that, it winds up, and then obviously you pull the trigger and it goes kapoof, and it shoots. And that belt in there was, it was destroying itself, and it ended up locking up. And I'm like, how do you put trim nails in, unless you use the regular white ones, but we're so used to these old school, these trim nails that we don't even have any, these guys. Just, how are you supposed to pick those off and try to, hammer that in? That's just not going to happen. So I could not believe, I was like telling the guy I was working with, I was like, you don't talk to anybody anymore and tell them how nice our tools are, because now it broke. And so, it was embarrassing after he just said, oh, it works great, they're flawless, and then here it goes shredding the belt. So I have had the belts in them shred before. You should comment below if there's a certain brand that you like. I think there was one that started with an S, but it said it could do like 1,000,000 shots. It was almost like a compression gas. And I've seen some of them that had, I don't want the cartridges, the DeWalt's with that, whatever that motor is that runs up to fire it, has always worked better. It really has. You can always charge your battery. Sometimes, yeah, they get a little sluggish when it's cold, but I don't want to deal with the gas. I got a framing nailer that uses gas with electric. I think it's a Bosch, and that thing is nothing but a pile. It just always is jamming up. And so, you know, this eliminates, if you've ever done trim in your house, I still like using my air trim nailer, but it eliminates that, you know, because obviously you want to carry around an air compressor, hose. It's just all in one package. Works really nice. So that's my little tidbit on the trim nailers. One thing I do want to mention though, I've had, out of all the years I've been doing this, I've never had anybody complain about putting too many nails in perimeter seal, the weather seal around the door here. Never had anybody ever complain about it. But I have had people complain when the nails, you know, if you only put a few in and they pop loose and that seal, you know, start sagging right here. It'll have a belly in it or an end or something. Now I've had customers. Now if you don't know, it's common practice. You always do your top first, then you do your sides. Your sides here are really holding the top in a sense in these corners. So I always do the top, then do my sides. Well, I can't tell you how many times I've had people work for me that don't put enough nails in, and they've sagged, and they're a service call back. And that is one thing, I tell you what, if you want to get under my skin, that is one thing right there that'll irritate the snot out of me, because it's another service call. It's another, you know, something failed. Another thing too you got to keep in mind is your weather seal. If you, I've cheated before. Let's say you got concrete down here, and you got a bow in here. I've pushed them before, and I've nailed them. You really don't want to do that. The reason you don't want to do that is because depending on what temperature, it might be cold outside, that thing's going to expand when it gets warm, and it's going to fight to try to get that belly back in it. So you really need to take the time to trim the weather seal, make sure it fits, don't make it too tight. And I've done it. I've done it personally, and I know I've had to go back a couple times because it bowed out on the corners or on the edges there, and I knew it was one of the ones I cheated. You know, it was the end of the day, and I thought, I just nail her up there, and nobody will ever, you know, it'll be fine. Well, we started getting warm weather, and it bowed out. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I don't know. Some guys probably keep like a 1/4 inch off something. I've never seen anything like that, but I just know if they're tight, you got to watch that. So, anyways, that's my little tidbit on the trim nailers. The old DeWalt's have treated us pretty well. Like I said, I still carry the old 18 volt, but I also don't do a ton of residential. But I did use it a couple days back for one, and it worked out good. So don't forget, it probably doesn't hurt to put enough nails. You know, I don't know, I probably do them, I don't know, every 6 inches or so, maybe 8 inches. But like I said, I never had nobody complain because the heads are so small on these, you know. So just a tip. Anyways, take care, you guys. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, yada yada. Enjoy the day. See ya.